Imagine this. Two legends of basketball, both with massive followings and years of experience, suddenly find themselves at the center of a heated controversy. It all started on a regular day when Sheryl Swoopes, one of the most celebrated players in women's basketball history, appeared on an ESPN segment to share her thoughts about the rising star Caitlin Clark. What she said next sent shockwaves through the sports world. Swoopes didn't hold back. While she acknowledged that Caitlin was talented, she questioned whether the hype surrounding her was justified. "She's good, no doubt about it," Swoopes said, leaning forward in her chair as if making a point directly to viewers at home. "But does she really deserve all this attention? I've seen rookies come and go, and some of them couldn't handle the pressure once they stepped onto the big stage." Her words felt sharp, almost like a challenge to Caitlin and her supporters. Social media lit up instantly. Fans were divided. Some agreed with Swoopes, saying she was just being honest, while others felt her comments were unnecessarily harsh. After all, Caitlin had been breaking records and inspiring young fans everywhere. Why tear her down? Enter Nancy Lieberman, another iconic figure in basketball. She wasn't just any commentator. She'd spent decades mentoring young athletes and advocating for women in sports. When she heard what Swoopes had said, she lost it. And by lost it, we mean she went full-on fiery mode during a live TV appearance. You could practically see the steam coming out of her ears. "Are you kidding me right now?" Lieberman exclaimed, shaking her head in disbelief. "This is exactly why people think we don't support each other in this league." Instead of lifting these girls up, we're tearing them apart. Her voice grew louder with every word, and soon she was pacing back and forth, pointing fingers at the camera like she was addressing Swoopes herself. "Caitlin is carrying this sport on her shoulders, right now, and instead of celebrating her, you're sitting there criticizing her. That's not leadership, that's jealousy." The moment became instant internet gold. Clips of Lieberman's rant went viral, sparking debates across platforms. Some called her outburst a necessary wake-up call, while others thought she was overreacting. But one thing was clear. The tension between these two powerful figures wasn't going away anytime soon. What made this whole situation even more intriguing was the backstory. Both Swoopes and Lieberman had built their careers during a time when women's basketball wasn't getting the recognition it deserved. They fought hard for equality, respect, and opportunities. Now, decades later, here they were, clashing over how the next generation should be treated. Was it generational differences rearing their head? Or was it something deeper, like pride or fear of being left behind? For many fans, this wasn't just about Caitlin Clark anymore. It was about what kind of culture women's basketball wanted to build moving forward. Should veterans like Swoopes have the final say because of their experience? Or should fresh voices like Caitlin's be given room to shine without judgment? As the days passed, the debate only intensified. People began digging into old interviews and social media posts, looking for clues about where Swoopes and Lieberman stood on issues like mentorship and representation. Meanwhile, Caitlin stayed quiet, letting her game do the talking. Every three-pointer she sank seemed to echo louder than usual, as if proving a point to her critics. But the silence from Caitlin didn't stop others from speaking up. Her teammates, coaches, and even former players jumped into the fray, defending her against Swoopes' remarks. One coach went so far as to say, if Sheryl doesn't see the impact Caitlin is having, then maybe she's the one who's out of touch. Ouch. Amidst all the chaos, Nancy Lieberman kept pushing her agenda. She appeared on podcasts, morning shows, and even late-night talk programs, using every platform to drive home her message. We need to unite, not divide. Her passion was undeniable, but some skeptics wondered if she had ulterior motives. Was she genuinely concerned about Caitlin's future? Or was she trying to position herself as the ultimate protector of women's basketball? Whatever the case, one thing was certain. This drama was far from over. The lines had been drawn and everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Would Swoopes double down on her comments? Would Lieberman continue her crusade? And most importantly, how would Caitlin respond when the spotlight inevitably turned back to her? For now, though, the story remained unfinished, a tangled web of opinions, emotions, and egos playing out in real time. Fans couldn't look away, and neither could the rest of the basketball world? The dust hadn't even settled from the initial explosion of comments and reactions when the focus shifted to Sheryl Swoopes herself. Who was she now, really? Once a trailblazer in women's basketball, a name that echoed through arenas and inspired young girls everywhere, she suddenly found herself under intense scrutiny. Her legacy, which had once seemed untouchable, was now being questioned. Swoopes had always been known for her no-nonsense attitude on and off the court. She wasn't afraid to speak her mind, whether it was about her own struggles or the challenges facing women in sports. But this time felt different. Her words about Caitlin Clark weren't just critical. They carried an edge that made people uncomfortable. It wasn't just about basketball anymore, it was personal. Critics began dissecting her comments, trying to figure out what drove them. Was it jealousy, resentment, or maybe something deeper? Some fans pointed out that Swoopes had spent years fighting for respect in a world that often overlooked female athletes. Maybe seeing someone like Caitlin rise so quickly, with so much attention and adoration, stirred up feelings she didn't even realize she had. Others argued that it was simpler than that. Perhaps Swoopes genuinely believed Caitlin needed to prove herself further before earning all the praise. Meanwhile, Nancy Lieberman continued to dominate the conversation. If anything, her fiery defense of Caitlin only grew louder. She didn't just stop at calling out Swoopes' remarks as petty or out of touch. She went deeper, questioning why older players sometimes struggled to embrace new talent without feeling threatened. "Look," Lieberman said during one particularly memorable interview, leaning into the camera as if speaking directly to Swoopes. "We've all been there. We've all been rookies trying to make our mark. But tearing someone down doesn't lift you up. It does the opposite. It drags everyone down." Her words resonated with many, especially younger fans who admired Caitlin's energy and skill. For them, Lieberman wasn't just defending one player. She was standing up for a whole generation of athletes who were ready to take the sport to the next level. But not everyone agreed. Some accused Lieberman of grandstanding, using the controversy to stay relevant in an industry that often moved on quickly. They argued that her constant appearances and soundbites felt less like genuine concern and more like a calculated move to keep herself in the spotlight. As the debate raged on, another layer of complexity emerged: ageism. This wasn't just about Caitlin versus Swoopes or Lieberman versus Swoopes. It was about how society viewed older versus younger generations within sports. Many pointed out that male athletes rarely faced this kind of scrutiny when transitioning between eras. When a young NBA star burst onto the scene, veterans might grumble, but they weren't typically called out for hating or holding back progress. Women's basketball, however, seemed to operate by different rules. Lieberman seized on this idea, turning it into a rallying cry. "Why are we doing this to ourselves?" she asked during a panel discussion. "Why are we pitting legends against newcomers instead of celebrating both? The truth is, we need each other. Without the pioneers, we wouldn't have paved the way for today's stars. And without today's stars, the game wouldn't grow." Her argument struck a chord with some, but others remained skeptical. After all, Lieberman wasn't exactly known for her humility either. Over the years, she'd built a reputation as someone who thrived on drama, often inserting herself into conversations where she wasn't directly involved. To her critics, this situation felt like déjà vu, another chance for her to position herself as the savior of women's basketball, while sidelining those who disagreed with her. Behind the scenes, things were heating up even more. Rumors swirled that Lieberman was actively lobbying network executives to sideline Swoopes, arguing that her divisive comments were bad for business. Sources close to the matter claimed she'd even suggested replacing Swoopes with younger analysts, people who could better connect with modern audiences. Whether this was true or just gossip, it added fuel to the fire, making the rift between the two legends seem almost irreparable. For Swoopes, the pressure mounted daily. Every appearance she made was scrutinized, every word dissected for hidden meaning. At first, she tried to brush it off, insisting that her comments had been misunderstood. "I'm not trying to tear anyone down," she told a reporter during a brief interview. "I'm just saying we should be careful about putting too much weight on one person's shoulders. The The game is bigger than any single player. But her attempts to clarify only seemed to dig her deeper. Supporters praised her honesty, claiming she was simply pointing out flaws in how the media sensationalized individual athletes. Detractors, however, saw her explanations as excuses, proof that she couldn't handle the changing dynamics of the sport she once helped shape. Amidst all the noise, Caitlin herself remained eerily silent. While her supporters rallied around her, defending her achievements and potential, she chose to let her performance on the court do the talking. Every game became a statement, every shot a rebuttal to those who doubted her. Fans watched eagerly, waiting to see if she'd finally break her silence and address the controversy head-on. In the meantime, the drama spilled over into social media, where hashtags like Respect the Game and Usher's Fire Swoopes trended side by side. Petitions popped up online calling for Swoopes' removal from broadcasting roles altogether. Meanwhile, others launched counter-petitions demanding fairness and reminding everyone that freedom of speech mattered, even in sports commentary. The tension reached such a fever pitch that even casual fans couldn't ignore it. Conversations about the feud spilled into workplaces, schools, and living rooms. People debated passionately, sharing their thoughts on who was right and who was wrong. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about values, principles, and the direction the sport was heading. And yet, despite all the chaos, there was a strange sense of unity beneath the surface. Whether people agreed with Swoopes or Lieberman, everyone seemed to care deeply about the future of women's basketball. They wanted it to thrive, to grow, to become something even greater than it already was. That shared desire, buried under layers of disagreement and emotion, hinted at the possibility of reconciliation, if only someone was willing to take the first step. For now, though, the battle lines remained drawn. Swoopes dug in her heels, refusing to back down from her original stance. Lieberman kept pushing forward, determined to reshape the narrative in her own image. And Caitlin? Well, Caitlin kept playing, letting her game speak volumes while everyone else did the talking. As the days turned into weeks, one question lingered in the air. Would this feud ever truly end? Or was it destined to become part of basketball lore, a cautionary tale about generational divides, egos, and the power of perception? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. Whoever blinked first would change the course of the story forever. The storm showed no signs of calming down. In fact, it only grew louder and messier as days turned into weeks. Social media became the battleground where fans, analysts, and even casual observers duked it out over who was right and who was wrong. The hashtags kept coming. Fire Swoopes, Respect Caitlin, Legacy over Hype, and each one seemed to add another layer to the chaos. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It had become a cultural moment that everyone wanted to weigh in on. On one side, you had Swoopes' supporters. These were often older fans who remembered her glory days, the championships, the records, the sheer dominance she brought to the court. They argued that she was simply speaking the truth, pointing out flaws in how the media built up young stars too quickly. "It's not personal," one fan tweeted. "She's just saying what a lot of us are thinking. Let Caitlin prove herself before we crown her the savior of women's basketball." But for every defender of Swoopes, there were twice as many critics. Younger fans, especially those who idolized Caitlin, saw her comments as mean-spirited and unnecessary. To them, Caitlin represented hope, a fresh face with incredible talent, someone who inspired kids to pick up a ball and dream big. Why tear her down when she was already doing so much for the sport? "If Swoopes has a problem with Caitlin, fine," wrote another user. "But why say it publicly? That's just cruel." As the debate raged online, Nancy Lieberman continued to stoke the flames. She appeared everywhere, morning shows, podcasts, late-night talk programs, spreading her message with relentless energy. Her arguments were simple but effective. We need to lift each other up, not tear each other down. She framed the controversy as more than just a clash between two personalities. To her, it was about the future of women's basketball itself. Lieberman's charisma made her a natural fit for TV, and she knew exactly how to play to the cameras. During one particularly heated segment, she leaned forward, looking directly into the lens and said, "This isn't about me or Sheryl. This is about Caitlin and every other young player out there. Are we going to be the generation that holds them back, or are we going to clear the way for them to shine?" Her words resonated with many, especially younger viewers, who admired Caitlin's grit and determination. But not everyone bought into her act. Some accused her of using the situation to stay relevant, claiming she thrived on drama and conflict. "Every time something happens in women's basketball, Lieberman is front and center," one critic wrote. Is she really defending Caitlin, or is she just trying to keep herself in the spotlight? Despite the criticism, Lieberman refused to back down. If anything, she doubled down, calling for accountability from network executives. Sources close to the matter claimed she was pushing hard behind the scenes for Swoopes to be removed from broadcasting roles altogether. According to these reports, Lieberman argued that Swoopes' divisive comments were damaging to the brand and could alienate sponsors. Whether this was true or just gossip, it added another layer of intrigue to an already explosive situation. Meanwhile, Swoopes found herself caught in a whirlwind she hadn't anticipated. Every interview she gave, every statement she released, was dissected word by word. People searched for hidden meanings, reading between the lines to find evidence of bitterness or jealousy. Even her attempts to clarify her original comments came across as defensive, fueling the fire rather than extinguishing it. "I'm not jealous of anyone," Swoopes insisted during a rare public appearance. "I've done my job. I've earned my place in this game. All I'm saying is that we need to be careful about putting too much pressure on one person. Basketball is a team sport. It always has been, and it always will be." Her explanation sounded reasonable enough, but it didn't satisfy everyone. Critics argued that her words carried a tone of condescension, as if she believed Caitlin wasn't worthy of the praise she was receiving. Supporters, on the other hand, praised her honesty, insisting that she was simply pointing out flaws in how the media operated. The divide between the two camps grew wider with each passing day. Amidst all the noise, Caitlin remained silent. While others debated her worth and potential, she focused on what she did best: playing basketball. Every game felt like a statement, every shot a rebuttal to those who doubted her abilities. Fans watched eagerly, marveling at her skill and composure under pressure. She didn't need to say a word. Her performance spoke volumes, but silence can only last so long. As the controversy dragged on, people began speculating about when Caitlin would finally break her silence. Would she defend herself against Swoopes' comments? Would she thank Lieberman for standing up for her? Or would she take the high road and avoid addressing the issue altogether? Everyone had their theories, but no one knew for sure. Behind the scenes, the tension reached new heights. Network executives scrambled to contain the fallout, holding emergency meetings to discuss whether keeping Swoopes on air was worth the risk. Some argued that firing her would set a dangerous precedent, punishing someone for expressing an opinion, even if it was unpopular. Others insisted that her divisive stance was hurting the brand and needed to be addressed immediately. Lieberman reportedly attended one of these meetings, making her case for replacing Swoopes with fresher voices. She suggested bringing in younger analysts who could better connect with modern audiences, emphasizing the importance of diversity and representation. Whether this was purely altruistic or part of a larger plan to secure her own legacy remained unclear, but it certainly added drama to an already complicated situation. As the days went by, the feud spilled beyond sports circles and into mainstream conversations. Late-night comedians cracked jokes about it, memes flooded social media, and even non-basketball fans started paying attention. It was impossible to ignore, the kind of story that transcended its origins and became part of the cultural zeitgeist. Yet, amidst all the chaos, there was a glimmer of hope, despite their differences, both sides shared a common goal. They wanted women's basketball to succeed. They wanted it to grow, to thrive, to inspire future generations. That shared desire, buried beneath layers of disagreement and emotion, hinted at the possibility of reconciliation, if only someone was willing to extend an olive branch. For now, though, the battle raged on. Swoopes stood firm in her convictions, refusing to apologize for her comments. Lieberman continued her crusade, determined to reshape the narrative in her own image. And Caitlin? Well, Caitlin kept playing, letting her game speak louder than any words ever could. As the weeks turned into months, one question lingered in everyone's mind. What would happen next? Would this feud fizzle out quietly, or would it escalate into something bigger? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. Whoever blinked first would change the course of the story forever. Behind the scenes, things were getting uglier by the day. What started as a public disagreement between two basketball legends had now turned into a full-blown power struggle. Network executives, caught in the middle of this mess, were scrambling to figure out how to handle the situation without alienating either side, or worse, losing viewers and sponsors. The tension inside the boardroom was palpable. On one end of the table sat those who believed Sheryl Swoopes should stay. They argued that her opinions, no matter how controversial, brought authenticity to the broadcast. "She's telling it like it is," one executive said, his voice firm but tinged with frustration. "People tune in because they want honesty, not sugar-coated fluff." On the other side were those who thought keeping Swoopes on air was too risky. Her comments about Caitlin Clark had sparked outrage among younger fans, many of whom felt personally attacked. "We're losing our audience," another executive countered, holding up charts showing declining ratings among key demographics. "If we don't course correct, we risk irrelevance." Then there was Nancy Lieberman, who wasn't officially part of these meetings but whose influence loomed large over every decision. Sources close to the network revealed that she'd been quietly lobbying for change, urging executives to replace Swoopes with analysts who could better connect with modern audiences. She even suggested mentoring some of these new voices herself, presenting it as an opportunity to diversify perspectives within the broadcast team. But was Lieberman truly motivated by a desire to elevate women's basketball, or was she using the controversy to solidify her own position? That question lingered in the minds of many. Some saw her as a passionate advocate for progress, someone willing to push boundaries to ensure the sport evolved. Others viewed her actions as self-serving, accusing her of exploiting the situation to maintain her relevance in an industry that often moved on quickly. Amidst all this back and forth, one thing became clear. Neither Swoopes nor Lieberman was backing down anytime soon. Both women dug their heels in, refusing to compromise or soften their stances. For Swoopes, the pressure mounted daily. Every appearance she made was scrutinized, every word dissected for hidden meaning. Supporters praised her courage, calling her the last bastion of truth in a world obsessed with hype. Critics, however, painted her as bitter and out of touch, clinging to a past era that no longer existed. Lieberman, on the other hand, thrived under the spotlight. Her fiery rhetoric and unwavering defense of Caitlin Clark made her a hero to many young fans. To them, she represented hope, a bridge between generations, someone who understood the struggles of being a woman in sports while also championing the future. But her critics weren't convinced. They accused her of grandstanding, pointing out that her constant appearances and sound bites felt less like genuine concern and more like a calculated effort to stay in the limelight. As the drama unfolded behind closed doors, leaks began surfacing, online, adding fuel to the fire. Anonymous sources claimed that heated arguments broke out during internal meetings, with tempers flaring and accusations flying. One report suggested that Lieberman had gone so far as to demand Swoopes' immediate removal, threatening to walk away from the network if her demands weren't met. Whether true or exaggerated, these leaks kept the story alive, ensuring it remained front-page news. For Swoopes, the mounting pressure took its toll. Friends close to her revealed that she was struggling to cope with the backlash. Once celebrated as a trailblazer, she now found herself vilified by a segment of the very community she'd helped build. Publicly, she maintained her composure, insisting that her comments had been misunderstood. Privately, however, she confided in friends that she felt betrayed, a pioneer reduced to a villain in her own story. "She never meant to hurt anyone," one insider shared. "She just believes in tough love. She thinks young players need to be pushed, not coddled. but people aren't seeing it that way right now. Meanwhile, Lieberman continued to dominate the narrative, appearing on every platform imaginable to drive home her message. During one particularly memorable interview, she leaned forward, her eyes blazing with intensity, and said, "This isn't about me versus her. This is about what kind of legacy we want to leave behind. Do we want to be remembered as gatekeepers, who held others back, or as builders who created opportunities for everyone?" Her words resonated with many, especially younger fans who admired Caitlin Clark's resilience and skill. But not everyone bought into her act. Skeptics pointed out that Lieberman's constant presence in the media seemed suspiciously opportunistic, questioning whether her motives were truly altruistic or driven by ego. Despite the growing divide, there were moments when both sides appeared to consider reconciliation. Rumors swirled that mediators had been brought in to broker peace talks, though nothing concrete emerged. Some speculated that Swoopes might issue a formal apology, while others wondered if Lieberman would tone down her rhetoric. But each attempt at resolution fizzled out almost as quickly as it began, leaving tensions unresolved. In the midst of all this chaos, Caitlin Clark remained silent. While others debated her worth and potential, she focused on what she did best: playing basketball. Every game felt like a statement, every shot a rebuttal to those who doubted her abilities. Fans watched eagerly, marveling at her skill and composure under pressure. She didn't need to say a word. Her performance spoke volumes. But silence can only last so long. As the controversy dragged on, people began speculating about when Caitlin would finally break her silence. Would she defend herself against Swoopes' comments? Would she thank Lieberman for standing up for her? Or would she take the high road and avoid addressing the issue altogether? Everyone had their theories, but no one knew for sure. Back at the network, executives grew increasingly desperate. Ratings continued to dip, and advertisers began pulling out, citing concerns about associating with such a divisive figure. The clock was ticking, and decisions needed to be made. Fast. Some floated the idea of giving Swoopes a temporary leave of absence, allowing tempers to cool before reassessing her role. Others pushed for a complete overhaul of the broadcast team, bringing in fresh faces to attract younger audiences. Whatever the outcome, one thing was certain: the fallout from this feud would have lasting implications, not just for the individuals involved, but for the future of women's basketball itself. Would it emerge stronger, united by a shared vision of growth and inclusivity? Or would it fracture further, torn apart by generational divides and clashing egos? For now, the story remained unfinished, a tangled web of opinions, emotions, and ambitions playing out in real time. Fans couldn't look away, and neither could the rest of the basketball world. The lines had been drawn, and everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Just when it seemed like the drama couldn't get any messier, something happened that no one saw coming. A leaked audio recording of a private phone call between Sheryl Swoopes and Nancy Lieberman surfaced online. It wasn't just any ordinary conversation. It was raw, unfiltered, and packed with emotion. The moment the clip hit social media, it went viral, sparking reactions from fans, analysts, and even casual observers who had been loosely following the feud. The recording began, innocently enough, with both women exchanging pleasantries, but within minutes the tone shifted dramatically. What started as a calm discussion quickly escalated into a heated argument, each side accusing the other of crossing lines they shouldn't have. "You've got some nerve," Swoopes could be heard saying, her voice sharp and biting. "You're out here acting like you're the guardian of this sport, but all you care about is staying relevant." Lieberman didn't back down. "Relevant? Are you serious right now?" she shot back, her tone rising with every word. "I'm fighting for these young players because someone has to. You're too busy tearing them down to see what's really happening." The exchange grew more intense, with both women interrupting each other, raising their voices and throwing accusations left and right. At one point, Lieberman accused Swoopes of deliberately trying to sabotage Caitlin Clark's career. "This isn't about basketball anymore, it's personal for you," she said, her frustration evident. "Admit it. You can't handle seeing her succeed." Swoopes fired back just as fiercely. "Oh, please. Don't act like you're some saint. This whole thing is about your ego, not hers. You're using her to make yourself look good." By the end of the call, tempers were flaring so high that profanities flew, words neither woman would ever dare say in public. When the line finally went dead, listeners were left stunned. It felt like eavesdropping on a private fight between two titans, except now the entire world had front row seats. The fallout was immediate. Fans dissected every second of the recording, analyzing tone, intent, and subtext. Supporters of Swoopes argued that Lieberman had provoked her, pointing out moments where her comments seemed unnecessarily aggressive. On the flip side, Lieberman's defenders claimed she was justified in standing her ground, especially since Swoopes' original remarks about Caitlin had sparked the whole controversy. Both women were forced to issue public apologies almost instantly. Swoopes appeared on a late-night talk show, looking visibly uncomfortable as she addressed the leak. "I regret how things were said," she admitted, choosing her words carefully. "But I stand by my belief that we need to be careful about putting too much pressure on one player. That doesn't mean I don't respect Caitlin or her talent." Lieberman followed suit with her own apology during a morning news segment. "I lost my cool, and for that, I'm sorry," she said, though her tone suggested reluctance rather than genuine remorse. "But let me be clear. My intentions have always been to protect the integrity of this game and support the next generation. If that comes across as confrontational, so be it." Despite their attempts to smooth things over, the damage was done. The leaked audio stripped away any pretense of civility, exposing the raw emotions simmering beneath the surface. For many fans, it confirmed what they'd suspected all along, that this feud was deeply personal, driven by pride, ego, and unresolved tensions. Network executives, meanwhile, found themselves in an even tighter spot. The leak added another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. Ratings continued to plummet as advertisers pulled out, citing concerns about associating with such divisive figures. Internal meetings became increasingly tense, with debates raging over whether to keep both women on air or cut ties altogether. Some suggested a compromise, give Swoopes a temporary break while bringing in guest analysts to diversify perspectives. Others pushed harder, arguing that removing her entirely was the only way to restore trust with viewers. As for Lieberman, opinions were split. While her fiery defense of Caitlin resonated with younger audiences, her constant presence in the media raised questions about whether she was helping or hurting the network's image. Amidst all this chaos, Caitlin Clark finally broke her silence, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of addressing the controversy directly, she released a heartfelt statement on social security-focused platforms, focusing on gratitude rather than grievances. "I want to thank everyone who has supported me through this journey," she wrote. "Criticism is part of the game, and I welcome it if it helps me grow. But at the end of the day, my focus is on playing basketball and inspiring others to do the same." Her message struck a chord with fans, earning praise for its maturity and grace. Many interpreted it as a subtle jab at both Swoopes and Lieberman, urging them to rise above the pettiness and remember why they fell in love with the sport in the first place. Others saw it as a strategic move, positioning herself as the bigger person in a messy situation. Behind the scenes, efforts to mend fences quietly continued. Mediators were brought in to facilitate discussions between Swoopes and Lieberman, though progress was slow and fraught with setbacks. Both women agreed to meet face-to-face, but the encounter reportedly ended in tears, with neither side willing to fully concede. As the weeks dragged on, the story began to lose steam. People grew tired of the endless bickering and turned their attention back to the court, where Caitlin Clark continued to shine. Her performances served as a reminder of what truly mattered, the game itself. Every dunk, assist, and three-pointer felt like a victory, not just for her but for women's basketball as a whole. For Swoopes, the experience took a toll. Once celebrated as a trailblazer, she now faced criticism from corners of the community she'd helped build. Friends revealed that she spent hours reflecting on her legacy, wondering if she'd unintentionally tarnished it by speaking her mind. Publicly, she remained steadfast, insisting that her intentions were pure. Privately, however, she struggled with feelings of regret and isolation. Lieberman, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by the backlash. She continued to champion Caitlin and other young players, using every opportunity to push for change within the sport. Whether motivated by genuine concern or self-interest, her persistence earned her a new wave of admirers, even as skeptics questioned her true motives. By the time the dust settled, the landscape of women's basketball had shifted. Conversations about generational divides, media representation, and the importance of unity dominated headlines. The feud may have started as a clash between two personalities, but it evolved into something much larger, a reflection of broader societal issues facing the sport. And yet, amidst all the noise, there was hope. Hope that lessons would be learned, bridges would be rebuilt, and the game would emerge stronger than before. After all, women's basketball had survived controversies before, and it would survive this one too. The question was whether those involved would choose to grow from the experience or let bitterness define their legacies. Only time would tell. The aftermath of the leaked audio call left everyone involved in a strange limbo. It was as if the entire basketball world had been holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. For weeks, the drama had consumed headlines, social media feeds, and even casual conversations at gyms and coffee shops. But now, with tempers slightly cooled and public apologies issued, people began to wonder, would this feud ever truly end? Or would it linger like an open wound, reminding everyone of the fractures within women's basketball? Network executives made their move first. After countless meetings and sleepless nights weighing the pros and cons, they announced a compromise that felt more like damage control than a resolution. Sheryl Swoopes would step away from her role temporarily, citing personal projects as the reason. The statement was vague enough to avoid further controversy, but clear enough to signal a shift. Meanwhile, Nancy Lieberman agreed to co-host a new series aimed at celebrating emerging talent in the WNBA, a project she pitched herself, positioning it as an opportunity to mentor and uplift young players. On paper, it sounded like progress. Fans could breathe easier knowing neither legend was being completely erased from the picture. Yet skepticism lingered. Many wondered if this decision was just a band-aid solution, designed to appease both sides without addressing the root cause of the conflict. Was it possible for two such strong personalities to coexist in the same space without reigniting old tensions? Only time would tell. For Caitlin Clark, life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be for someone under constant scrutiny. Her silence during the height of the controversy spoke volumes, and when she finally broke it, her words carried weight. In interviews following the network's announcement, she expressed gratitude for the support she'd received while steering clear of taking sides. "I'm here to play basketball," she said with a smile during one post-game press conference. "If my game can inspire others or bring attention to this sport, then I've done my job." Her response struck a chord with fans. Instead of fueling the fire, Caitlin chose to focus on what mattered most, the court. Every shot she sank seemed to echo louder than before, not because of the controversy, but because of her resilience. She didn't need to defend herself against criticism or thank anyone for standing up for her. Her performance did all the talking, proving once again why she was considered one of the brightest stars in the league. As the dust settled, the basketball community began reflecting on the bigger picture. This feud wasn't just about two legendary figures clashing over a rising star. It was about generational divides, evolving values, and the delicate balance between tradition and innovation. Older fans reminisced about the days when players like Swoopes paved the way for women's basketball, fighting tooth and nail for recognition and respect. Younger fans celebrated the new era where athletes like Caitlin pushed boundaries and inspired future generations. But perhaps the most important takeaway was the realization that growth rarely came without friction. Change was uncomfortable, messy, and often painful, but it was also necessary. Women's basketball had come so far, yet challenges remained. How could the sport honor its pioneers while embracing fresh voices? How could it ensure that debates about representation and opportunity didn't tear the community apart? Lieberman seemed determined to answer those questions. Her new series became a platform for highlighting not just Caitlin, but other promising talents across the league. Each episode featured interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and heartfelt stories about overcoming obstacles. Critics initially dismissed the project as a PR stunt, but as episodes aired, something unexpected happened. Viewers connected with it. They saw themselves in these young athletes, their struggles, triumphs, and dreams. Slowly but surely, the narrative shifted from division to unity. Swoopes, meanwhile, used her time away from broadcasting to reflect. Friends revealed that she spent hours watching games, attending practices, and mentoring young players. It was almost as if she wanted to remind herself and others of why she fell in love with basketball in the first place. When she eventually returned to the airwaves months later, her tone had softened. She still offered critiques, but they came across as constructive rather than cutting. Some fans noticed a newfound humility in her commentary, as if the controversy had taught her the importance of balance. The relationship between Swoopes and Lieberman, however, remained complicated. While they avoided direct confrontations, there was an unspoken tension whenever their paths crossed. Neither woman fully forgave the other, and trust was slow to rebuild. Still, they managed to coexist in the same professional circles, occasionally nodding acknowledgement during events or panel discussions. It wasn't friendship, but it was progress. As the season progressed, the spotlight gradually shifted away from the feud and back onto the game itself. Fans cheered louder, arenas filled up, and sponsors returned, eager to associate with a sport that continued to grow despite its challenges. The controversy may have divided opinions, but it also sparked important conversations about the direction of women's basketball. People realized that disagreements weren't inherently bad. They were opportunities for growth, provided everyone approached them with openness and respect. In the end, the story served as a reminder of how interconnected the basketball community truly was. Players, coaches, analysts, and fans all played a role in shaping the sport's future. Yes, there would always be disagreements and clashes of opinion, but there was also room for understanding, compromise, and collaboration. And Caitlin? Well, she kept doing what she did best, playing basketball. Her journey wasn't defined by the controversy surrounding her. It was defined by her passion, determination, and ability to rise above the noise. As she stood on the court after another hard-fought victory, sweat dripping down her face and a grin spreading ear to ear, it was clear that she represented hope. Hope for a brighter future, not just for women's basketball, but for anyone who dared to dream big. The feud may have faded into the background, but its lessons endured. Unity wasn't easy, especially in a world as competitive and passionate as sports, but it was worth striving for, because at the heart of it all, beyond egos and rivalries, was a shared love for the game, and that was something no amount of drama could ever take away.